The governor's office intentionally delayed releasing COVID death numbers at nursing homes.
An investigation has found that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed nearly a dozen women in and out of state government and worked to retaliate against one of his accusers.
How did former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo go from being so globally celebrated for his handling of the COVID pandemic that he was given an Emmy to being outed for covering up thousands of deaths, sexual harassment allegations longer than a CVS receipt, being stripped of that Emmy and resigning in disgrace, to present day announcing his run for mayor? Well, he has some nerve. New York City has never been known for our ability to pick good mayors. And I would even go as far as to say we have a habit of going from bad to worse. Because we managed to go from being ashamed of de Blasio's weak leadership, where he let NYPD bully him so bad they locked up his own daughter for protesting their brutality and he ain't do shit, to electing NYPD's bottom bitch, Eric Adams, a man so corrupt he became the first sitting mayor of New York City to be federally indicted on a litany of corruption charges after stealing millions from public funds and doing illegal bribes and deals with Turkish government officials. And he's since become Donald Trump's puppet in exchange for turning immigrants over to ICE in what is supposed to be a sanctuary city. And I don't suspect that Eric Adams has agreed to be Donald Trump's bitch in exchange for his charges being dropped. I know it to be fact, because after Trump's Department of Justice instructed federal prosecutors to dismiss Eric Adams' charges, the federal prosecutors didn't just refuse. They not only resigned, their resignation letters were damning accounts of the corruption taking place. First, U.S. District Attorney Daniel Sassoon, who it's very important to note is a conservative lawyer who was recently promoted by Donald Trump, refused to dismiss the case, resigned, and wrote an 8-page letter to the Attorney General that stated, quote, I attended a meeting on January 31st, 2025 with Mr. Bove, Adams' counsel, and members of my office. Adams' attorneys repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, indicating that Adams would be in a position to assist with the department's enforcement priorities only if the indictment were dismissed. Mr. Bove admonished a member of my team who took notes during that meeting and directed the collection of those notes at the meeting's conclusion.
Nigga, is you taking notes on a criminal fucking conspiracy? What the fuck is you thinking, man?
She also added, as you know, our office is prepared to seek a superseding indictment that would add an obstruction conspiracy count based on evidence that Adams destroyed and instructed others to destroy evidence and provided false information to the FBI, and that would add further factual allegations regarding his participation in a fraudulent donor scheme. In other words, not only do we have no intention of dismissing our case against Eric Adams, you are highly aware that we plan to bring additional charges, but now you're trying to make us dismiss charges in exchange for a quid pro quo relationship with Adams, and I'd rather quit than take part. At least 3 other prosecutors resigned after refusing to dismiss the charges, one of whom was Hagen Scotton, the prosecutor who led the investigation into Adams since it began in 2021. His resignation letter to the Deputy Attorney General read in part, I expect that you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me. Please consider this my resignation. And if you had any doubt as to the quid pro quo arrangement between Eric Adams and the Trump administration, well, this man got his silly ass on TV and let them fist him like this.
If he doesn't come through, if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City, and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?" So,
I want ICE to deliver. And I want ICE to deliver. We're going to deliver for the safety of the people of this city.
But this is not a video about Eric Adams. I have actually said all I hope to have to say about him for the rest of my days in the rise of Eric Adams, the fall of Eric Adams, my Breakfast Club interview with Eric Adams, and my video fact-checking my interview with Eric Adams. And I encourage you to watch those videos if you haven't already and you want to know why New Yorkers hate Eric Adams so much and how he became one of the worst mayors and frankly people in America. But listen, people, we officially have way, way bigger fish to fry than Eric Adams now. Regardless of what happens with his charges, what becomes of him after his term ends, that not gonna be mayor come next election, so f him. And as far is the people wasting their own political capital and credibility by jumping into the sinking ship of a black man who not only revived NYPD units that had been disbanded for their disproportionate brutalization and murder of black and brown people, he sent those exact units into the black communities he pretends to represent and gave them the okay to enact stop and frisk policies worse than white man Bloomberg did. Allow those people to do that. Let's take a look at this story about Andrew Cuomo and him relaunching his mayoral campaign. You can read this article and more on Ground News, my source when doing my research for productions like these, because not only does their app and website let you compare how the media is framing any given story worldwide and get context on each source, in this particular climate where everyone is targeting you with clickbait and misinformation, where it's hard to tell what's real, what's fake news, and what's just straight up propaganda, maybe even AI, a tool like Ground News is invaluable, especially when I'm researching things like the rise and fall of Andrew Cuomo and him relaunching his mayoral campaign. Follow along at ground.news/Olay. When we take a look at the story, we can see that there are over 250 sources covering this story, and over 78% of them are highly factual, which gives us insights on the credibility of the source and the timeliness of their corrections. Comparing coverage is interesting. The left highlights his controversial background with headlines like Andrew Cuomo's top 3 mistakes don't include the one that forces resignation, while the right uses language like this: former Governor Andrew Cuomo launches New York City mayoral bid, bare bones, and fails to provide crucial context about why he left office and needs to make a political comeback. Ground News really cannot be beat because it makes it easy for me to make sure that I'm not just spewing unsubstantiated mess at you, which is why, as always, it was a no-brainer to go with them for today's sponsor. So go to ground.news/Olay or scan the QR code on the screen to subscribe. Ground News is giving my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. This is their best deal of the year and will only be available for a limited time, so you better jump on it. Ground News is subscriber funded, so you won't see any ads on their website, which contributes to sensationalism and clickbait reporting. By subscribing, you're not only getting an amazing resource, but you're supporting their work, which also supports my work. Thank you for sponsoring the video, Ground News. Now back to it. Eric Adams is a corrupt disgrace who we are almost rid of. So please tell me, why the are there New Yorkers out there even considering, entertaining the idea of trading a soon-to-be corrupt, disgraced former mayor for a corrupt, disgraced former governor who the President of the United States of America had to force to resign after New York's Attorney General Letitia Brown James conducted a massive investigation that revealed that while serving as our governor, Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed at least, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but at least 11 women, including the state trooper. And you have not heard shit yet. You ain't even got your feet wet yet, New York. I spent the last 4 years proving to you that electing Eric Adams was a mistake and one we cannot afford to make again. And I know we struggle to pick a good mayor, but listen to me this time. Listen to me good when I tell you. Andrew Cuomo is a terrible fucking guy. You just don't know that because while the devil works hard, name recognition and the Cuomo PR train works harder, because this man, who has spent the last several years since he was forced to resign in disgrace, using more than $60 million of our taxpayer dollars to bury his victims in civil lawsuits, announced he's running for mayor, and instead of people spitting in this face, they're mother carrying on like they want that old thing back. And that leads me to believe that you simply don't know Andrew Cuomo like I know Andrew Cuomo. And I know exactly why you don't. Come with me as we take a journey back to 2020, when Andrew Cuomo was still governor and the Cuomo PR train wasn't just chugging. That mother was chugging so hard to paint Cuomo as America's sweetheart that when I called my mother, who lives in the Bahamas and is us, not this constituent, when I called her and I told her that this Cuomo was the bane of my existence, my mother said to me, her first child, and don't talk about my boy Cuomo.
Huh?
My boy. And my auntie said the same shit.
Well, excuse the fuck out of me.
Before we explore how my Bahamian family had somehow become Cuomo-sexuals prepared to jump me for slandering their boy, let me explain why I had called to tell her this the bane of my existence in the first place. You see, in 2020, I was a public defender working in Queens, New York, with at least 60 or more cases. And I remember what my reaction was when I first heard about a potential pandemic. I thought it was gonna be something that came and went, back like when I was in high school and the news was panicking about swine flu for a while before seemingly just moving on. When I tell y'all that from January to early March 2020, I did not have the ability to seriously fathom a global pandemic, the lockdowns, or any of what was to come, I mean that. So much so that even after businesses started closing, sending folk home and talking about essential workers, I still didn't believe it. I remember saying to my friends, so long as I still gotta go to court, shit can't be that serious. Because let me tell y'all something, New York City don't close their motherfucking courts. Not for arraignments. There's always arraignments. Arraignments refers to the first time you see the judge after being arrested to try to get released or make bail. I have been in court for arraignments till midnight on Christmas before. New York City is not one of them places where if you get locked up on Friday, you're asked out till Monday. No, you can see the judge. I say all that to say that the day the courts closed and sent us home for this pandemic, the sheer amount of panic that set in for me, you would have thought I was SpongeBob trying to remember my name after Squidward made me delete everything from my mind but fine dining. All jokes aside, I remember being on the subway scared to death on my way back home thinking America was really gonna turn into the purge. And in many ways, it did. Police kill people every single day in this country. They brutalize, they kill and arrest protesters every day. But in the summer of 2020, they were on the Summer Jam screen. I don't know if you really remember how scary 2020 was, or just how real shit got. People were losing entire families to COVID overnight. Record mass deaths, not just across the country, but across the world. Police killing black people and protesters all over the country, rolling them over and shit, and getting assisted from volunteer white vigilantes. And as all this is happening, as most of us were in our homes scared to death, social distancing from our loved ones, COVID was not only raging inside the jails and prisons where incarcerated people simply cannot social distance, where they weren't being given masks, they're not only being stacked on top of one another, denied medical treatment and watching death happen all around them. Like Andrew Cuomo not only decided to use them for free prison labor to make hand sanitizer, he then would not allow them to use it. In 2021, The Nation reported, for 6 months last year, Trinell Drake worked up to 15 hours a day packaging hand sanitizer, filling, capping, labeling, and boxing bottles in Great Meadow Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison in upstate New York. He had signed up last March, putting in for a double shift as soon as he heard that incarcerated people were being enlisted to produce hand sanitizer. It wasn't for the pay. The most he made was 38 cents an hour. He just wanted to be of use to the outside world at a time where it seemed to be falling apart. I did wrong to get in here. I made a mistake, said Drake, who was 2 years into a 13-year sentence for charges of robbery. But I felt that I could do something to push that away. He was pleased to find out that hand sanitizer was sent on to the hospitals, daycares, schools, and stores. I'm happy about that, he said. We did a big thing, a huge thing. You should be thankful that we did that. But if Drake did his part to keep the state safe and clean, the favor has not been reciprocated. Tens of thousands of incarcerated New Yorkers have spent the last year in a dangerously unsanitary prison system in which COVID-19 has run rampant. It's just disgusting, Drake said of Great Meadow. You have birds that fly around in here all day, pee and feces all over the floor, and the radiators, the heat's barely on while it's freezing out. You got broken windows all through. It's filthy. The officers walk around without masks on, and when they do have them, it's around their neck. They don't give you the proper cleaning supplies to be able to clean your cell. Few New Yorkers have been left as unprotected against the virus as the tens of thousands of people caught within its prison system. As COVID-19 surged across the state throughout the last year, just around 10% of the prison population was granted early release. The other 90%, more than 32,000 people, have remained incarcerated, packed in facilities where social distancing is effectively impossible and health conditions are extremely poor. Indeed, prison watchdogs and advocates of incarcerated people say they've watched in horror this past year as the state agency that administers the prison system, the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, failed to take the most basic protective measures, from reducing density to providing adequate PPE to offering widespread testing, until late March, when a judge intervened. The governor even refused to provide most people in prison with vaccines. Refused. And if you doubted the nightmare that was being locked inside of a New York City jail or prison during the pandemic, just look at what the inside of Rikers turned into because of Cuomo's actions. And listen, his depraved indifference towards incarcerated New Yorkers did not start or stop with denying them use of the hand sanitizers he forced them to make, or denying them access to COVID vaccines. So it should come as no surprise that by the time the Department of Corrections gave a enough to test incarcerated people for COVID, many had died and 6,500 people tested positive for COVID, which was twice the positivity rate of the state at large. Think about how scared you were when the world first came to a halt, when it really started to feel like you were in a dystopian thriller. Now imagine having been locked in a jail cell, not even because you've been convicted of a crime, but because you don't have the money to afford bail so you can fight your case from the outside. That's what the people I was representing, who are calling me daily, begging me to do everything possible to get them out, were experiencing. Although Rikers' infamy precedes it, people have been deliberately misled to believe that Rikers is infamous because it's this terrible prison for especially terrible people. Meanwhile, reality is that Rikers is the fate that awaits any poor New Yorker accused of so much as a traffic crime or something as trivial as stealing a backpack.
At the age of 16, he was arrested and sent here for allegedly stealing a backpack.
It was like hell on earth. We were beaten, stomped by the correction officers, and they was just beating on me.
It is a pre-trial detention center where the vast majority of the people incarcerated there have not had their day in court or been convicted. They are just poor, so they are trapped in a cell awaiting trial on charges often far, far, far less serious than anything Donald Trump, Eric Adams, or Andrew Cuomo have been accused of. So even though I was in my basement apartment alone and afraid myself, I was all too aware of just how much better I had it than my clients who were charged with bullshit misdemeanors and trapped inside of what is a human rights crisis under normal circumstances and a death trap during a global pandemic. And while many of you know me as Eric Adams' arch nemesis, my true day ones, the people who followed me on Twitter before I had 1,000 followers, know that what Andrew Cuomo would do next is actually my villain origin story and how I would come to be an outspoken advocate and critic of New York City's leadership. Because while I was in my basement fighting to get the last of my incarcerated clients out, as everyone, including many New York legislators, were fighting to decarcerate Rikers and to protect the public from COVID by passing a COVID relief bill, Cuomo saw it as an opportunity to quite literally call a session in the dead of night so that he could bulldoze bail reform rollbacks into this COVID relief bill and push it through without any pushback. So at a time where COVID was already raging in the prisons, which doesn't just impact incarcerated people, it impacts the staff and everyone they come into contact with on the outside, which is a shit ton of people. We were supposed to be decarcerating the jails, and Andrew Cuomo was working overtime to pack them by trampling over landmark successful democratically passed bail reform. And that should outrage everyone listening. It certainly enraged me so much that in the summer of 2020, I decided I needed to take my advocacy out of the courtroom and onto Twitter to shed light on what Cuomo was doing to push back against these rollbacks. But I am not an ass. I know that many of you are unfazed by what I've shared thus far, because there's a significant amount of people who think that anyone caught up in the criminal system deserves to be abused, and that things like bail reform are bad. And under normal circumstances, I'd tussle with y'all. I would tussle with y'all, but we don't have time for that. We have a primary in May. So what I'm instead saying to you is that the problem with allowing a corrupt leader to abuse one community you don't care about is that you empower them to abuse the communities you do care about. Because let me ask you something. Do you think that Cuomo's inhumanity started and ended with incarcerated people? Oh baby, no. Oh baby, no. Cuomo didn't just refuse to release incarcerated people from prison. He didn't just try to imprison more criminals. He incarcerated our elders, your grandparents. Instead of releasing already sick elderly people from their nursing homes because they were the most at risk from COVID, Cuomo not only refused to allow the nursing home to release them home to their loved ones even after they'd been hospitalized for COVID. Not only did he send these sick COVID-ridden elderly people back into the nursing homes, he transferred them to a prison nursing home where he allowed the crisis to get so bad, 13,000 elderly people died, and he covered it up, lied about the numbers to conceal thousands of deaths. You really cannot imagine how bad this shit was while it was happening. We had elected officials making videos pleading with the government and the public for answers as to what was happening to people's grandparents in these nursing homes because they couldn't hear from them, they couldn't access them.
Hey everyone, this is Assemblyman Ron Kim. I'm here at the Sapphire Nursing Home because one of my constituents and her daughter has reached out to me because she's been stuck in this nursing home without any ability to communicate with her. And she's actually, the daughter's here standing with me, next to me. and she still can't get in and figure out what's going on with her mother. After we discovered that there's between 30 to 60 people who might have passed away due to the coronavirus at this nursing home, we still don't have any answers from the state or the nursing director. So we're trying to get to the bottom. There are many families, like my constituents here, who deserve answers. They deserve to know that their families are being kept safe and they're practicing social distance, they're being tested. These are lives that every second count for these people inside of this nursing home. So we're here demanding answers, and we're not gonna stop.
And Cuomo got away with it for a long time until New York's Attorney General, Letitia James, brought it to light. So how is it possible that while this was busy doing all this wicked ass shit, my mom, and probably your mom too, were under the impression that Cuomo was her boy? The answer is Chris Cuomo, aka Andrew Cuomo's much better looking younger brother and a lad journalist. Remember, I told y'all, the Cuomo PR train don't around. That shit is quite literally in their blood, okay? The Kardashians don't know nothing about them. As a family, that's what the Cuomos do for each other. So much so that Andrew Cuomo started his political career as his father Mario Cuomo's campaign manager when his father ran for New York governor. And won. That's why y'all can't tell me y'all don't like Nepo babies and keep not only giving every Cuomo every seat of power they ask for, y'all letting them treat the governor's mansion like a family home. They done got so greedy now they want the mayor's office too, my God. And the Cuomo PR train for the family name does not stop. Andrew Cuomo didn't just help make sure his daddy became governor. Once Andrew Cuomo himself became governor, this erected a bridge and named it after his daddy. Because PR is a full-time job in the Cuomo family. So if Andrew Cuomo had to build his daddy a bridge for being governor, it should come as no surprise that Andrew's little brother Chris would feel compelled to use his show at CNN to not just gas his brother, oh no, to not just mislead the American public, but my mama in the Bahamas, to believe that Andrew Cuomo was the world's greatest governor handling the out of the pandemic. Whole time, 42,000 people died in New York, more than any other state. Chris Cuomo trotting Andrew Cuomo out as America's leader while millions of Americans sat at home on lockdown, worried, unable to depend on Trump's leadership in the White House is why my mother wasn't trying to hear shit when I tried to tell her Andrew Cuomo was a ass. Chris Cuomo vacated every shred of journalistic integrity to lionize his brother and ingratiate the public to them as the Cuomo brothers. And the media ate it the up. Look at Entertainment Tonight gassing these niggas.
You have Cuomo primetime, I have Cuomo all the time.
It's the cute brotherly moments like that that has America totally swooning over the Cuomo brothers. Yeah, they have been all kinds of cute, and America is freaking loving it.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
Chris Cuomo executed the out of the Cuomo PR train so spectacularly, in fact, that while this Andrew was mishandling the pandemic so heavy, he didn't know how or where to hide the mounting bodies he was lying about because New York had the most deaths in the country. They not only gave this motherfucker an Emmy for his handling of COVID, he had the audacity to write a book titled American Crisis: Leadership Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic. And he earned millions from it, a $5 million deal. And doing PR for his brother isn't where it ended. Chris Cuomo actively conspired with his brother about how to navigate and dodge public accountability for his mounting sexual harassment allegations. And it was a long time before CNN decided to even pretend to give a about what Chris Cuomo did. And he gave us the most half-assed apology he could muster.
When my brother's situation became turbulent, being looped into calls with other friends of his and advisors that did include some of his staff, I understand why that was a problem for CNN. It will not happen again. It was a mistake.
CNN described Chris Cuomo's behavior surrounding the phone calls as inappropriate, but said the anchor will not face disciplinary action.
Well, maybe not the most. Wait till you see his brother's apology down the line. And CNN promised not to discipline him. And even though they did eventually fire him, make no mistake about it, they didn't fire him because they disapproved of his actions. Which is why, as you heard just earlier in that clip, they initially promised he'd face no disciplinary action. So, what changed? New York Attorney General Letitia James and more than 11 brave women who spoke up against years of sexual harassment and abuse of power from Andrew Cuomo is what changed. If you thought Eric Adams was a corrupt, sick who sexually assaulted his colleague, you'd be right. So imagine how crazy it is that Andrew Cuomo has him beat by a lot. Let me start by saying, we do not think Cuomo sexually harassed his staffers. We know this. Letitia James conducted a massive investigation into the sexual harassment allegations against former Governor Andrew Cuomo and concluded that the allegations made by at least 10 women were all credible, and the exhibits, transcripts, and video testimonies of 10 different accusers and multiple witnesses are all publicly available. I say that to say, this isn't a matter of if he did what he was accused of. That is a matter of fact. So I'm not here to try to exploit these women's trauma, to try to convince you of what's been proven was done to them. Please feel free to peruse the publicly available evidence from that investigation. What I'm here to talk to you about is why it matters and why it should matter to you. And there was no better person to help me illustrate that to you than Lindsey Boyland herself, who was not only the first woman to find the courage to speak up about Cuomo's sexual harassment, it's not something she did lightly as someone who was working with him for years.
And I started out at the Economic Development Agency for the state. And it was a great, I got to travel the whole state. I got to meet lots of people, see how we can help businesses, growth, and, regional strategies. But then, the minute he saw me and the minute I started working in closer contact, he kind of pulls people in like a predator. I think one thing that I try to convey to people is I've been, unfortunately, like so many of us women, sexually harassed throughout my career at most every job I've ever had. I've had all kinds of experiences, but I had never had an experience like this where the entire environment, the entire infrastructure of state government close to him and around him was set up to feed this predator, the governor of New York. I felt like, and I've told this story, but I can't think of anything that's more apropos. When I was a little girl growing up, there was this bully in my neighborhood who had a pet snake, and I think I was friends with a few of the other kids lived around him in the neighborhood. He would feed the snake mice, and he would jam the head of the mouse against the glass case to freak them out so the snake could just eat it. And this sounds like a vicious story, and I want it to, because I remember the memory of it was vicious, and that is what it felt like to be working for him. I felt like the mouse having my head jammed against the wall until I could be fed to the predator. The saddest part about that is I don't think there's anyone in state government who's had any interaction with him who doesn't already know these stories. I would be truly shocked if there is one person who hasn't worked with him who doesn't absolutely believe, and if you ask them privately, absolutely believe every single story and may even have a story themselves. But this abuse of power, he did all of these same things. Whether we talk about the Moreland Commission, which was supposed to be this ethics front that was supposed to clean up state government. Fast forward, he basically blew it up when they started getting close to investigating him. Fast forward, he's now trying to blow up the state's reimagined ethics panel just so that he could keep his book deal money. So, I worked on his team, increasingly close to him for over 3 years.
And I think it's important to emphasize that Lindsey worked with him for years because she's not only a victim of his abuse, she's someone who knows firsthand what his leadership is like, what he's like as a person.
He's all about pushing people down. And when I worked for him, so my most recent job working for him was the Secretary for Economic Development and Housing. So I have a background in urban planning, which sounds nerdy, and it is, and it's a lot of fun, parks and public spaces, MTA, fan, affordable housing, the like, that's my jam. But I ended up being basically his business person and overseeing housing in a few other areas, including storm recovery and the like. He would constantly be asking for things to announce. He didn't really care what they were. He cared how it would read in the press. And I bring that up because that's what he's doing now. He'll say, this person endorsed me yesterday. Keep in mind that the day before that, our state ethics panel, the state's version of the Supreme Court, overruled his fight to try and, investigate his book deal. So he continues to lose. He continues to have these bad stories, but he just tries to change the conversation. If he's a master at anything, it's two things: shamelessness and this kind of constant machine politics churning. He's not particularly intelligent. In general, he doesn't have a policy mind, and you see that in the portfolio that I oversaw. There's any number of things that he did wrong that really harmed New York, and I'm happy to address those too.
And although when Cuomo resigned, he gave us this evasive apology,
I want to address the recent allegations that have been made against me. As you probably know, the Attorney General is doing an independent review, and I will fully cooperate with that review. Now, the lawyers say I shouldn't say anything when you have a pending review until that review is over. I understand that. I'm a lawyer too. I want New Yorkers to hear from me directly on this. First, I fully support a woman's right to come forward, and I think it should be encouraged in every way. I now understand that I acted in a way that made people feel uncomfortable. It was unintentional, and I truly and deeply apologize for it. I feel awful about it, and frankly, I am embarrassed by it. And that's not easy to say. I never knew at the time I was making anyone feel uncomfortable. I ask the people of this state to wait for the facts from the Attorney General's report before forming an opinion. I will fully cooperate with it, and then you will have the facts. I'm sorry for whatever pain I caused anyone. I never intended it, and I will be the better for this experience.
Don't be misled by that apology into thinking that he took accountability for what he did, that he regrets what he did to those women, because here is reality.
One thing I hear people like Richie Torres say, or others say, is he's had to be held accountable. He resigned. He's sorry, and he even alluded to it in a very vague way, I guess, in his video, which I will never watch. I don't watch BS. All of that's completely a lie. He has spent the last several years using taxpayer dollars to do scorched earth. And this is one of the judges' perspectives. You know how circumspect judges have to be when they talk about defendants. They can't go out on a limb unless it's true. And said, one of the judges said his approach to these cases against him in civil court has been scorched earth. I mean, I've had to pay personally over, I think it's now closer about after all this is done, because I get letters every week simply for speaking my freedom of speech right now. I'll get, my attorneys will probably get a letter because when this goes live, and that'll be probably $2 million of personal money in cases that I am not a party, simply because I'm a potential witness and he has weaponized the court system against me. And that is insane. And listen, it makes me uncomfortable to say that I can pay $2 million for that stuff. It's a huge burden, and I only share this personal thing because if that's happening to me with all of my privilege, what do you think happens to women in America every day? They get destroyed by these things. You never hear the harm that happened to them because they are blown away by the power structure. That is the only benefit of sharing this part of the story that's my own. And that hasn't stopped for 1 minute. Every birthday my daughter has had since this all happened is somehow consumed with this monster attacking me and the other women. The first woman who took down her federal lawsuit but is still pursuing a state one, he sought out gynecological records for her. I mean, how disgusting do you have to be to sexually harass a woman that's younger than I think 2 of your 3 daughters, I think played soccer with one of them, and then you harassed her in basically her first job out of college, asked her about her sex life, about her rape, and now she's trying to hold you accountable, and your taxpayer-funded attorney asks for gynecological records. I mean, how disgusting of a man do you have to be? That's one. Another one I like to highlight is the state trooper's case, who, by the way, I don't know who she is. I've never met her. I have no information about how he harassed her. I absolutely believe 100% that he did everything that she says, and I'm sure the evidence will be voluminous once that goes to trial, but this woman was going to protect him with her life. She was going to take a bullet for him. And how did he repay this woman who's, again, keep in mind, significantly younger than myself? Again, I'm the old lady here. Imagine a much more young, compelling person gonna give away her life, and he's harassing her and touching her and asking about her sex life and all these disgusting things. I like to say it, and I think you probably already know this, and I think a lot of the viewers at home know this. The number ultimately in the most recent investigation that came forward was 13 women through the Department of Justice. Do you think it's actually 13 women? No. He has made an example by smearing, attacking all of us using taxpayer dollars, not just to shut us up, but to make an example of us. This man, even before the report came out, I knew it was going to be bad. I knew it was going to be bad, even if everyone was trying to help him and shield him, because he did not know how to behave appropriately with women. He doesn't know how to behave appropriately with women. You can see him over the years doing these interviews with journalists, and he's like, how does the sausage taste in your mouth? Just like completely disgusting monster stuff. And, you know, it's there. These clips are out there. And that's just a small snippet of the abuser that this man is.
Feel the same way, too.
Will you eat the whole sandwich?
I will eat the whole sandwich.
Yeah, no excuses. You know, everyone, you know, the county.
It's not as easy to eat this in front of all these cameras as you make it.
Well, that's right. That's
now I know
your
how the
fault.
animals feel.
Yeah, there's too much sausage in that thing. Yeah.
And if it's not bad enough battling a powerful millionaire in court, the public is not only all too willing to help him abuse his victims, even women join in.
I think you've probably seen it, and unfortunately I've experienced it in this particular case. Some people hate women, and some of those people are women. And I think it's this internalized misogyny. I don't like to use big words, you know, that we don't need to. Basically, if you're maligned and if you're told your whole life in some way that you need to be fixed or be a certain way to be right, then you're going to internalize that. And many of us women find new paths as we grow, and some others get beaten down by it. So I try to have sympathy, but some of the worst trolls and some of the worst abuse I've gotten after coming forward was from women. And it's not a large group of women. I think most of us are sisters to each other. I do have rose-colored glasses of most women, but it is a terrible time to be a woman in this country, and I don't think it's going to change easily, and it's definitely not going to change if we still have a bunch of women hating each other.
Despite the backlash that comes with speaking up, Lindsay has never regretted it. And here's why.
I went to a women's college, I went to Wellesley, and I had all these amazing women mentors. And some of the ones from older generations were the ones who basically advised me not to say anything. So I didn't say anything for years for a number of reasons, but including their advice. And it wasn't until I decided to say, you know what, this is not working for me. And you may have seen, you know, it was because Charlotte reached out to me and told me about what happened to her. And I felt responsible what had happened to her and her sexual harassment, and that he was being considered, his name was being floated for attorney general. And that freaked me out. So that's when I really came forward. But, you know, I think in a way, some people say the worst thing that happens to you is in some ways a blessing. And I do think that's true, because I was going down a path where, you know, they talk about white feminism, and I'm trying to talk about it more. If I was just perfect and I did everything right and I didn't color outside the lines and I proved myself every day, then I would be the kind of woman who wouldn't have a problem. And I don't know that that necessarily is, as even though I wanted to be advancing the cause for women, I don't necessarily think that that was the best way for me to do that. I think blowing things up, as unfun as it has been, but, you know, holding him accountable and not going away now, particularly because I have a lot more privilege than the other women. You know, I'm a lot older. I'm the old lady of this group, which is, think about that for a second. I'm middle-aged, but I'm not that old. I'm the old lady. That is who this man, by and large, was harassing. Women much younger than myself. Most of them not senior in the administration, whereas I was.
It's easier to take advantage of.
Yeah, so I feel I felt the duty then, a responsibility, and I feel the responsibility now, because 3 of these women, not myself, are suing him directly, or in one case suing the state for their harassment that was found through the Attorney General's office and her independent investigator, the state assembly, and then Biden's Department of Justice. I feel compelled to speak up because I do have somewhat of a platform, and I do have the privilege, and I can pay my attorney's fees, even though I'm purely potentially a witness in any of these cases. He has so beaten these women down, using the courtroom and using taxpayer dollars for all of it, to the tune of almost $60 million when we pair the sexual harassment suits with COVID nursing home scandals and the book deal and all the stuff that he's done wrong, all the abuses of power. It's all that money. He's basically made it impossible for these women to speak up, and why would they? The only reason why you're hearing from me is because I have the privilege to speak up. But there are so many women who've been abused by this man and are being abused by him right now. And it wasn't just him, it was this entire toxic, pervasive environment of predation. And that comes out very much in the report. So the abuse didn't stop. It's changed, and in some ways it's worse because everyone thinks it's over. And it's $2 million for someone who's not even suing him.
New Yorkers, I am not asking you to care about women, to care about elderly people, incarcerated people, minorities, immigrants, or even your neighbors. I am asking you to give a about yourselves and not hand the keys to the city over to another corrupt, power-hungry jackass that will do nothing for us, definitely will not stand up to Donald Trump, and who we will have to spend the next 4 years trying to get rid of. I tried to warn everyone about Eric Adams and we didn't listen. So please, let's for once not have to learn a lesson the hard way. Do not rank this in the New York City primary. I didn't say rank him last. I said do not rank him at all. We have a lot of great candidates running for New York City mayor, but right now it seems very clear to me, based on the polls and all the simulations as to how the vote would go if it happened today, that it is time for us to consolidate around Zoran Mamdani and Brad Lander, and respectfully, the others should just drop out. If you are polling at 1%, 2%, 5%, it's time to hang it up. And I truly mean that as respectfully as humanly possible, and I hope none of these candidates take this personally, because it's not. We have less than 2 months till the primary, and it's more important to me that New Yorkers not end up with another piece of shit mayor because we fractured the vote between a million candidates who didn't have a shot in hell at winning. I understand you want to be mayor, but this ain't about you for a second. Think about the bigger picture. Me personally, I am trying to learn from my 2020 mistakes, and I hope that we all do, because the last time we should have all rallied behind Maya Wiley, but instead we fractured the vote between her, Diane Morales, Catherine Garcia, Andrew Yang, and a bunch of couldn't win. So let's learn from our mistakes and be sensible and logical now. Rank Zoran Mamdani 1 and Brad Lander 2, or whichever way you want to do it. I really think we should consolidate around Zoran. I think Brad is a great candidate too, but Zoran has the biggest momentum right now. He is in second place. Cuomo is currently leading in the polls because name recognition is a bitch. But Zoran is a true progressive who is in second place, far ahead of everyone else in this race, followed by Brad Lander, who has an excellent record of standing up for New Yorkers as our comptroller. Rank Zoran and Brad Lander 1 and 2, and whatever you do not rank Andrew Cuomo and do not rank Eric Adams. And for those who are interested, I'm hopefully going to be sitting down with Zoran Mamdani and Brad Lander to interview them in the next couple of weeks and provide you a deeper analysis of the race and their platform. So I suggest you subscribe to my new channel, Illuminati Politics, so you don't miss that report. That will be linked in the description below. Thank you for watching this video, guys. The Illuminativerse is huge and always expanding, so let me tell you where to find everything. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long-form video essays, my deep dives. You can also join the main channel, Illuminati, to get access to my exclusive show, Olay and Chill, and my backlog of content like Iconic and Illuminati Joints are all on the main channel. Subscribe to my new channel, Illuminati Politics, so you don't miss my interviews with Brad Lander and Zoran Mamdani, who are running for New York City mayor, as well as my State of the Union type addresses that I do with my O Squareds, and any explicitly political content I have planned for you going forward. Subscribe to Illuminati Pop for all my TV and movie takes, reviews, and breakdowns. We have all the fun over there, and we also have a Patreon for Illuminati Pop where you can get all the videos uncensored. Subscribe to Olay and Friends for my podcast, Olay and Friends. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes but don't have an hour plus to spend. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for all my writing.